Here's a true and probably boring story, but I pre-ordered a PSVR 2 and then cancelled it an hour later. And then I pre-ordered one again and cancelled it an hour later again. I've since had the chance to try one out for myself over the past few weeks, and as a result of my time with it, I've had one sitting in my shopping cart ready to go. The tech-loving part of my brain just really wants that shiny new toy, but there's just been one huge thing stopping me from buying it. And the more I think about it, the more I don't know if I'll ever be able to. Out of the gate, the PSVR 2 is the most impressive VR headset I've ever used. The dual 2000 by 2040 pixel OLED screens with refresh rates up to 120Hz are definitely the main star. But for me, it's actually all the little things it does that make it a real faff-free joy to use. For one, it's just easy to get on. The headband is simple to adjust with a quick release button, a snappy dial to tighten, and there's a nice little bit of slidey action on the front bit too. It's a cinch getting it to sit just right on your noggin and snug on your face. It's also quite light, and the rubber pads on the front and back keep it firmly in place and provide a good amount of cushioning. You'll almost forget you're even wearing it. And once it's on, the soft rubber shroud does an amazing job of blocking out all the outside light. Seriously, it's pitch black in there, and as a bonus, it's not spongy foam that's going to absorb all those gross face juices of everyone that wears it. And it doesn't mark your face as much with the VR ring of shame. A sneaky ventilation port also does its job of keeping things from fogging up. The included headphones handily snap to the back of the headset and dangle down just a little bit right next to your ears, making them easy to pop in and stopping them from becoming a tangled mess. Playing through music-heavy games like Tetris Effect and Pistol Whip left me with no complaints about their quality too. They're good little buds. Overall, setup is a breeze too, especially compared to the convoluted horror show that was the PSVR 1. One single cable goes into your PlayStation, and then after a few simple steps, the cameras will scan your room, set your play space, and you're good to go. I would love if the headset was completely wireless, as having a cable dangling around does get in the way of any room-scale VR sessions. But I'm sure that would be more complicated and expensive to do. And the cable is nice and light. You'll soon forget it's there if you're playing seated or standing in one spot. There's now also a very handy camera pass-through button that lets you check your surroundings with some actually decent cameras, so you can quickly grab a drink or check if your pet has wandered into your play space without removing the whole thing. There's also a physical IPD adjustment wheel, which lets you set the screens the right distance apart for your specific eyeball requirements. And I appreciated that thanks to the eye tracking capabilities, they can even help guide you to the correct placement for your eyeballs. Speaking of which, the eye tracking is one of the most next-gen features of the headset. It's strangely satisfying to be able to select options in menus by simply looking at what you want. It honestly felt like mind reading. And one of the main advantages of that tech is it means developers can use a thing called foveated rendering, which is a fancy term for saying games can focus on putting the most detail into the things you're actually focusing on, while cleverly cutting back on anything at the edge of your vision. That means every ounce of graphical goodness the PS5 can muster is literally going directly into your eyeballs. And Horizon Call of the Mountain has shown us it's capable of mustering quite a bit. Check out our review of that here. Of course, those graphics are pointless without good screens to show them off on, and thankfully, the screens are excellent. They're high enough resolution to almost eliminate the screen door effect, which is where you can make out those tiny gaps between the individual pixels of the screen. It's still noticeable without having to look too hard, especially in bright scenes. But it's minor enough that you'll soon forget about it. It's also super easy to read text, and the inky blacks of the OLED and the HDR capabilities really make games pop. There's a little bit of that God ray effect from the Fresnel lenses, but it's not too distracting. And the whole setup gives a decent field of view at around 110 degrees wide, which is wide enough to be immersive, but still very much feels like you're looking at the world through big goggles. I'm still waiting for the day where VR is like stepping into the Matrix, rather than strapping some screens to my eyeballs. But PSVR 2 is getting there. Oh, and it has rumble in it too. It's usually used sparingly and is subtle enough that you forget it's there, so it's hardly a revolution. But it's a welcome addition to add just that little bit of extra feedback and immersion. The new Sense controllers are light years better than the previous upcycled PS Move solution. Goodbye weird colored balls and good riddance. These kind of controllers will be pretty familiar to anyone who's used other modern VR controllers. There's a big halo around each handle that lets the headset track their positions very accurately, as long as they're in the field of view of the headset's cameras. The straps are nice and easy to slide on, touch-sensitive buttons let you pull all sorts of hand signals in-game, and the impressive dynamic trigger tech from the DualSense makes an appearance to help add a little bit more tactile feedback to interacting with the world. That little bit of extra crunch on trigger pulls in Pistol Whip is so satisfying. They're just solid controllers and feel great in their hand, and their 4 to 5 hour battery life proved long enough to satisfy almost any session. One issue I had with them was that they put the PlayStation button right underneath the thumbstick. It's just a bad place to put it. My thumbs naturally rest there, and often during tense moments I'd accidentally click them, sending me to the home screen. That's a real buzzkill in the heat of an exciting boss fight. If I have one other minor complaint, it's just a bit of a pain needing to have 2 cables lying around to charge both of them at the same time. Of course though, you could invest in one of the charging docks to fix that. That's all pretty glowing, I know. So what's the one big problem stopping me from buying it? It's not compatible with PCs. As someone who's already invested a fair bit in the VR world on my PC, the fact I can't use this headset with any of it is a deal breaker. Of course, I realize there's probably all sorts of valid economic or technical reasons that Sony might not want to support that, but I still think it's a mistake and a missed opportunity, especially when I look ahead at what's coming to the PSVR 2 and, well, there's not much. And what is available or has been announced are mostly VR games I've already played elsewhere. I'd also love to see them try and make more of a push to offer at least some VR games in one of their various subscriptions. As it is, there's not a single PSVR 2 game available in any of the PS Plus incarnations. Even PSVR 2 compatible games like Tetris Effect only have their PS4 versions available, which is just a tease. VR games are often relatively expensive, especially for their runtimes. It sucks to drop a chunk of change on a game and then be done with it in an afternoon. But if they offered a bunch of them in a subscription service, well, the whole package would be a lot more desirable. But as it is, the amount of PSVR 2 content available makes it pretty hard to justify a purchase. And if we have the exclusives that were released for the first PSVR as any indication of what to expect across its lifetime, well, there may be, 3, 4 must-have exclusives I'd actually need a PSVR 2 for, if that. Also, the fact that PSVR 1 games aren't compatible with PSVR 2 unless they get an update is a bitter pill to swallow for anyone thinking of upgrading. And it doesn't instill much confidence that it's an ecosystem that's worth investing in. And from the looks of it, I'm not alone. Reports are showing that the initial sales have been a lot slower than Sony anticipated. It's likely due to factors outside of the quality of the headset and games though. A lot of people are just struggling to get by at the moment, and a fairly pricey VR headset is hardly an essential purchase. And if sales don't pick up, then developers aren't going to support it. And if developers don't support it, then they don't make games for it. And if people don't have games to play, they won't buy it. It can be a vicious catch-22 cycle if product launches don't turn around quickly. Just ask the Wii U. And as good as the headset might be, there's healthy competition in the VR hardware world. Barring some unlikely total collapse of the VR industry, it's just a fact. Even better and more competitive headsets are on the horizon. So I'm just going to be patient and wait to see what the future has in store. But if I knew that this would work with my PC VR games and was future-proofed beyond the PS5 lifecycle, well, I'd have bought one already. Perhaps that's just it. I'm simply not the target market for it. Maybe for someone who already has a PS5 and is just interested in checking out this whole VR thing, it'd be perfect. If that sounds like you, then I can absolutely recommend the PSVR 2. It'll absolutely give you a fantastic, top-of-the-line VR experience, and for a fair bit less than an equivalent high-end PC and VR headset would currently set you back. But for me, while it's a very impressive piece of kit, and I want one, I just can't justify buying one. Do I have to give this back now? I want it. I want it. I want it. I have to buy one now. Do I have to give it back now?
Yeah, that's a loan unit, Joe.
No, jeez, jerk.